Around the early 80s, a real transition took place in my life, a loss of job, a loss of a marriage, sort of in transition. I came to Berkeley, threw out anchor here, floundering a bit. But finally, I had a teaching background, and I hooked up with Chapman University, private college, university that had a contract with the Navy to provide college credit courses for enlisted sailors aboard ships deployed all over the world. And it's kind of ironic that I found myself on these ships because I had registered as a conscientious objector at 18. I had no fondness for the military per se, but there I was, and all of a sudden shipping out of San Diego on a landing ship tank carrying SEALs and tanks, destination Busan, to do operations with Korean Marines on the DMZ. It was a rocky ride. I'm going to start with the first poem that references that time, called Goat Island. Before taking off across the Pacific, we went north up and around the Channel Islands to practice shelling an island. So this poem came from that first experience. Early one morning, while the sky rained snakes and the sea was coming up slime, I woke to cannon thunder pounding the flanks of the island, shaking the ship as a blind fist beats at the sides of an empty oil drum, raising clamor that would jolt some mother's blue-eyed son of a gunner's mate all the way from Tears to Minnesota. Island, fog-shrouded island, how you endure the folly of men, unmoved, unshaken, bewilders me. I'd ask directions of you if I knew the words. Instead, I inquire of a liaison officer, what lives there? Goats, he says, nothing but goats. The Spaniards brought 'em. What grows there? Nothing grows there, only what goats eat. Palms pressed to ears. Hold out against this coming blast, this next round to be done. Before your fiery sun sets, red as the blood wells up in my mouth, I'd pray to the goats if I remembered how. The next poem is a continuation of time teaching on Navy ships, and one of them took us more than once to the Philippines, to Subic Bay, which is a major base for the U.S. in the region. And of course the base town is called Olongapo. The base was, of course, reminded me of a miniature golf course, sort of all tidied up and air-conned and sterile, as you can imagine. The town was given over to honky-tonks, neon-lit bars, jeepneys, these funny little vehicles that spewed gas along the street and jingled their bells and took you up and down the boulevards. There's a bridge connecting the base to the town, and of course security on the bridge. But that's where the playground was, the town of Olongapo. I asked my students to write a poem about something they observed that repeated itself, some kind of routine. Not a poem, I asked them to write a description. And so, having done that, I thought I would write a poem that I call Ritual, that references this transition from the base to the town or back. Ritual. In the evening you will see them standing, dark river brides raised on altars, nailed to narrow boats called bancas. Thin candles keep a dim light below the bridge dividing base from town. From there they fish the air for coins in long white tapered gowns, cry out strange prayers to a god they call Joe, who from the railing may let fall a silver piece or two before crossing into sanctuary. And for me, the question is, which way was sanctuary? But yeah, there it was. These experiences always stayed with me, and so this is one way to give them some kind of presence. I don't write poems all the time. It's sort of intermittent, and I've published a few now and then. But it's something that I think I'll be wanting to do more of soon. The next poem I want to read takes place in San Francisco after attending a poetry reading some years ago. It's called Still Life in November. I am walking up a side street in Chinatown, for the moment the only street in the world. It's always been there, still as a chauffeur holding the door for decrepitude, by a corridor checkerboard facade, where white and black squares climb the walls of a tenement below a pale green arch, darkening toward the center, entrance to a tunnel of lost gloves. Above the arch, tubs of bamboo, judiciously placed between heads of benevolent dragons, who throw licking tongues of white fire into the breathless air, where faded flags, red, white, and blue, hang suspended in the late afternoon of a November sky like frozen handkerchiefs. I know I've been here before, passed by the wrought iron grillwork, the shape of swans swimming out of the wall, still as a skiff drifting by a bridge on a mirror, seen through a green window. Another one is Berkeley origin. Not too long ago in January, walking downtown in the cold, called Waiting for the Light to Change. Cold January downtown afternoon, a blur of cars rumbling at the stoplight, waiting for the light to change. Red to green, a flutter of pigeons fly up, circle, land on the BART station roof. Out of the cavernous mouth of the station, a saxophone blows a honey-sweet tune, echoing through the air, a breath of pure sound, a musical prayer blowing somewhere over the rainbow. Above the heads of passers-by, a sax horn pierces the cold gray sky with its rainbow song. Crows on a lamppost caw, flap their wings and fly. Why then, oh why can't I? Raucous cry, I turn to see an old lady walking hard down the sidewalk, crying out, "To hell with you, goddamn liar, shut your mouth!" Shouts out her pain, "You don't like it, honky, so what's my name?" A world of pain she carries like a burning rock she'll throw at the first motherfucker who crosses her. No pot of gold at the end of her rainbow, no bluebirds sing. Mannequin faces walk on by. I see my broken reflection in the window of a comic book store. Red light turning green, horns honk, engines roar. I take a last look back to see the black silhouette fade into the night. The next poem is pretty simple. It's called Mary V and Mary Mag, and it's to all the good women I've ever known and still know. Mary V and Mary Mag, joined to the hip, were like Siamese twins. Some thought they were really one and the same, born of flesh and blood like you and me. It was the gnarly, knuckle-headed patriarchs, some say, that wanted to separate them, worshipping one as the Virgin Mary of Christ, the other scorned, a whore. Only it was Christ himself who put the kibosh on the bald cabal by embracing both Mary V and Mary Mag. Two sacred roses of the same vine, two blood and flesh women, loved and embraced as one, joined to the hip forever and ever. Hallelujah. And another one in honor of the beauty of women. Zachila Market was from a trip some time ago to Oaxaca. And Zachila was a small village. Indian women, red rebosos, sit by bunches of onions and radishes laughing. Black beans, white beans, brown, spill from the aprons of the gray-haired women. Turkeys and roosters, tied by the legs, wait in the shade of the jacaranda, blinking. Goat in the marketplace licks the arm of the man who will sell him by sundown. Black oxen, yoked together, piss, 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 piss in unison under the same sun. Ruin sink into red earth like worn teeth in the gums of an old beggar. Church domes rise above the cellars of sugar cane in the shadows. Babies cradled in shawls drink deep from their mother's gourd. And I think the last poem I'll read today is called In the Game of Chance and Desire. It was recently published in this anthology, Richmond Anthology of Poetry, which I recommend to you if you want to hear some very good poets from Richmond or read them. I can put you in touch with the publisher, Daniel Marlin. His wife, Lauren, illustrated the book as well. Some wonderful poems from Richmond, California. And this one references a found object assemblage that I made, and Daniel included a photo of the assemblage in the book. It's rather hard for you to see at your distance, but if you can see any of it, it might help to reference the poem a little more. In the game of chance and desire, I stumble upon sea debris washed ashore, wedged between rocks, boat trim from a broken railing, paint and varnish peeling, old skin with silver screws still shining, in a sun-bleached plywood panel, soft grains deep and fluid as memory. Speak to me in a sea whisper of another time, walking through a shaded marketplace in Morelia, where I saw a wooden top that spoke to me of a child spinning and spinning until he dropped, and that top became the mouth of the mask that speaks to castaways if you listen, to the voice behind the mask, your voice that speaks to you in the game of chance and desire. Thank you.
So I'm going to, so I try to figure out what to read, poems that would fit into the theme that Sue gave us of inner escape, broadly defined. So I think these poems in some way relate to that. Inner escape, kind of inner realizations, epiphanies of various kinds. So I'm going to read first a few poems from the letterpress book. I typeset 10 poems by hand for this book. So here are a few of those poems. Lemonade. The little blonde girl runs toward me. Do you want some lemonade? Her voice a ballad of hope. I hesitate, then ask, how much does it cost? 50 cents. No thanks. Reflexive frugality, or perhaps stinginess. I hurry away, but still glimpse the light fading from her eyes. I don't need lemonade, all that sugar, I tell myself. But there's a heaviness in my chest. I stop at the corner, wrestle with myself. Her deflated face won't go away. Turning back, I call to her. I change my mind. Her face is a new story, worth more than 50 cents. I place 2 quarters on the wooden stand with its lemons, water, sugar. She fills my cup to the brim, ignoring her red-headed female colleague's admonition. Not so much. I take a sip, murmur, very good, thank you, savoring its tart sweetness and an unburdened heart. Thank you. So that was an inner escape from my own constriction, automatically saying no. So the next one, singing in Portuguese. 2 lithe young guys, short dark hair, blue jeans, capoeira t-shirts, fill the dazzling spring air with song under the archway by the lake. Ducks in the background. One fellow wears sunglasses, twirls and slaps a tambourine, while the other plucks a barren bough, a long bowed stringed instrument, hollowed out fruit gourd at the bottom. They sing a lengthy song in Portuguese, whose harsh, exotic sounds whirl, melt into each other, a hypnotic chant, or a surrealistic dream. Ecstasy steals over the barren bough plucker's lean face. His body sways, fingers dancing faster and faster, voice an urgent gallop, all of him a slave to the music. Only a few people are listening, but the musicians don't seem to care. They're playing for a larger audience. So this was an inner escape, that they were so immersed in the music that they were escaping the mundane. And then the last one I'll read from this was my own inner escape, a new paradigm. Serious shoppers bustle all around him at the local grocery, frowning as they search for elusive items, study ingredients, make difficult choices. But the tall young guy wearing headphones looks as if he's mellowing out in his own living room. Hips, shoulders, pelvis, subtly swaying to subterranean sounds. His lean face looks dreamy as he tosses granola into his basket, then boogies over to the next aisle. Meanwhile, I look determinedly for organic sesame oil, maneuver my wide shopping cart through crowded aisles, an impatient city driver. Then I see him again, his fluid body, quiet eyes, and suddenly I'm able to laugh at myself and slip out of the maze. This was at Berkeley Bowl so probably a lot of you can relate to that. Here's another poem of inner escape. It's one of my favorite places in Auckland, Saucil Creek. And I've often gone there to escape from things like traffic and noise and just kind of too many sensations. Saucil Creek in summer, toasty air brushes my skin, soft earth caressing my feet. A red-breasted robin serenades me from its arboreal perch. Wild blackberries, tart and sweet against my palate. Mingled fragrances of warm earth, fresh mint, moss-covered bark. Sunlight's tender fingers anoint green leaves, spangle the creek, which whispers to my attentive ears. Butterflies flirt with the afternoon, floating in golden light. Blue vault of sky above a cathedral of trees. Saucil Creek, my small piece of paradise. Let's see. So this is another poem of inner escape from my own constriction. Linda. In the supermarket, another supermarket, I notice a slender 60-ish woman with a pale complexion, small upturned nose, and think, that looks like Linda. We lived on the same block, dated 2 decades ago, read short stories and poetry out loud, shared our writing, flirted outrageously. Lonely after a divorce, I longed after Linda, ignoring all the stop signs, barbed words wrapped in velvet, stiff body language, until we crashed, our banged up egos staggering from the wreck, fleeing in separate directions. Still, I was haunted by her remote beauty, her oceanic eyes. Married now, less lonely, I get in line with my groceries, startled to see the same woman move into line behind me. Is it really her? I'm tempted to speak, but don't, recalling her averted face, her stony silences whenever we met on the street. For several years afterwards, I close my eyes, breathe deeply, hope the line moves quickly. Then other memories surface. Losing her mother at 12, never knowing her father, and my best poem, forged in the crucible of our brief time together, a poem of yearning for something more substantial, more eternal, and silently I bless our troubled souls. Thank you. Let's see, how much time do I have? Let's see, about 5 minutes, I think. Let's see. This is a poem also of inner escape. It's written in the voice of a paramedic. And the question I asked him when I was going to the emergency room was, how do you survive being a paramedic? How do you deal with all the stuff that you see? And so this is based on my conversation with him. Paramedic. You see some pretty rough stuff as a paramedic. Babies with broken bones. People with gunshot wounds. We have the second highest suicide rate, right behind dentists. I was hanging out with another paramedic, and he seemed okay. But then the next day, he's gone. Suicide. You have to be able to step away, take a mental vacation from the job. Why do I keep doing it? Well, it keeps me on my toes. 23 years ago, I was bored stiff, selling lawnmowers at Sears. Becoming a policeman sounded good, and then the Rodney King incident happened. I thought about becoming a fireman, but I didn't want to burn to death climbing up a ladder. So I took a, quote, easy job. Actually, only 7% of our calls are life and death. You get a guy who eats too many pot brownies and thinks he's dying, or a hypochondriac who has some new life-threatening illness every week. But I'll tell you, delivering babies, bringing new life into the world, while it's still pure and innocent, that's the ultimate high. So that was his way of dealing with the stress of that job. And let's see, I'm trying to decide what to end with. Something about Trump or something more sweet. I think I'll let go of Trump. Cocoon. So this is a poem of escape in a way, inner escape also. Only a short distance from the bustle, the serious business of recreation at the Hawaii Hilton Hotel. Naomi and I lie in a hammock on a balmy winter night, glittering with stars and a full moon. As we gently sway, our bodies sing, surrender to night's embrace, the wind licking our faces. We revel in our island of silence, our silken cocoon, and the untrammeled sky, winking at us, trembling with light. Thank you.
Yeah, first I thought I was going to read about refuge and then inner escape. And the more I thought about these subjects, the more complex they became, especially the subject of refuge, which kind of morphs into exile. And it has consequences sometimes that are unforeseen, which is a subject of a poem I'll read in a few minutes. But the first poem is about refuge. It's about a specific place in Japan, which became very dear to me, a river, the Mukugawa River. And it's called River Love. When I came undone by fear that the world would break in the wind, love answered me with river grass, water's light, quick as spiders across the flow. I wanted to know how to live in the world. I'd asked the question many times of the sparrowhawk and the cucumber vine, of the river stones and windows at morning. The answer was always love. It rose against my desperation. It blossomed beside my habitual whine. It laughed me down to my knees. I asked at sandbars where herons stood above meandering water as the cold page of snow sealed the brow of the river island. Love's answer was always whole. I thought, who can handle love for long? But it returned in the rhythm of breath, healing root of the body's song. I'd asked the question of winter gulls who ripple down into the river, and I asked at the arc of midnight. The question was simple. It dwelled in the bone. It was cut from the flux and pulse of dreams. Love answered, dismember every oath, give allegiance to the common word. Even in silence, even its silence holds truth's wild bird. And the next poem is a recent poem. As I warned, it deals with all the complexities of refuge, exile, and other experiences that are woven in inevitably. It's called Sauna in Auckland. The sign above the entrance reads Sauna Market and Liquors, and pictures apartments of deep red brick against a desert horizon. I stand across Telegraph Avenue and imagine a shopkeeper inside, the cell phone in his pocket, a long-distance filament of wounded nerves, direct line to Yemen, where bombardment hollows the walls of night. The fog is breaking in Auckland as blue fingers of noon sky appear with sunlight. Down the street, a cluster of stores from the Horn of Africa, Red Sea, Oasis, Zahara. One day, I watched a man park his truck outside the River Nile market and unload sheep carcasses, bloodless and skinned, in a pile at his feet, then carry them, one on each shoulder, through the kitchen door, a harvest of sterile carnage, unlike the mess of Sauna, where princes' pilots scour the city for targets. Cardamom and henna are scorched into market stalls beside other, more terrible stains. Perhaps the man behind the counter has put his cell phone to sleep, not wanting to think about the pain in Sauna. There is plenty of pain, after all, in Auckland, for which he sells small remedies of hope and distraction, big winter lotto tabs, salt peanuts, mini vodka bottles. I too shut out the city's pain, but it appears unexpectedly curled asleep in doorways at dawn. Or maybe the man behind the counter is talking to his brother, who stands behind another counter 8,000 miles away in Sauna, exchanging blessings as his brother breaks the Ramadan fast. Next poem is from my book about Palestine, and since it's a poem, I'll let it speak for itself. Checkpoint fantasy. Where are you going? The soldier asks. To Jerusalem, with black dates for the angel's courtyard. The angel of dance or of atonement? The blind angel who sees with her fingers? The angel of judgment or of condolence? The black angel whose brow turns silver at dawn? The angel of rivers or of mist? The seamstress angel who threads the dream with desire? The angel of dogs or of wanderers? She who invents the language of pity. Then go in peace, the soldier says, but first look into my eyes. What do you see? I see gallows in one eye, a candle in the other. Okay, let's see. I have a poem here that's kind of a generic response to that lovely phrase that we hear connected with people expressing the worst part of themselves. Go back where you came from. On March 12th, 2012, Shaima Al-Wadi of El Cajon, California, received an anonymous note which read, "Go back to your own country." A week later, she was found murdered on her living room floor. Let's say you took your own advice and went back where you came from, to the tubercular slums of Glasgow 150 years ago, or the peat farms of starving Galway, or to Molodechna, where Jewish boys changed their names to dodge 20-year hitches in the Tsar's infantry, or to Reggio Calabria, when landowners had their way with peasant girls as they worked their parents into dry furrows. Try going back, not as a tourist with credit card, but clueless, in the humble shawls your forebears wore, gathering lice in steerage, before they poured off the docks to have the long syllables of their names lopped off by an immigration officer, checking for signs of palsy, scanning his list of anarchists. Sail backward, past ports of departure, through centuries as soldiers, hiding your religion or killing for it, as wet nurses, unable to feed your own. Back through the winters of the Rhineland, Bohemia, Piemonte, along trails of forgotten migration, down the millennial ladder to ancient African valleys where your great mothers learned to walk upright. But don't stop there. Forage with pointed snout for grubs among ferns, beneath the shadows of pterodactyls. Re-enter the primal ocean before our fins became toes and our lungs began their subtle duty. Become again the one-celled flares of life we were, and continue into elemental stardust, the whirlwind of the black, invisible hand. Okay, I'm going to close with a popular request, which reflects my cautious nature. I always like to be ready for emergencies. Thus, I wrote acceptance speech for the Nobel Prize for Literature. On the plain above the North Atlantic, I watched great fields of clouds sown and harvested by the wind. Later, I traveled through a city as women on gray streets turned their faces from a wild wheel of snow. I am, as always, startled and sustained by these extravagant gestures of weather. And I stand before you, startled. You have chosen one so little known or published, reviewed but once in a smug, cursory paragraph, one read by only a handful. But your logic is honorable, and I accept the prize. The money is particularly welcome. I would like a fraction of it in dimes and quarters. Some small part will go to the panhandlers of my country, those dressed for the weather and those who are not, those climbing a sober ladder of hours in front of convenience stores, and those sliding into the darkness between planets. Other winners, George Seferis, Octavio Paz, have passed on. It is too late to break bread with them and tell them how much they gave me. Perhaps Derek Walcott or Toni Morrison will spend an hour with me now that I am in their number. Maybe not. You know by now, members of the committee, that you've exposed yourselves to ridicule by choosing me. A compelling argument rages in objection on 6 continents. Innumerable candidates are called greater and more deserving. It has been said that Daniel Marlin demeans the Nobel Prize. You will, I predict, survive these insults. I cannot deny that your judgment on occasion has been dangerously flawed. I am thus greatly relieved not to be chosen for the Peace Prize and listed in 2-point World Almanac type in the same column as Henry Kissinger, that baritone of carnage. Finally, it is the custom here to reflect on literature and on humanity, the irony of one and the blind insistence of the other, a book's witness upon chaos and the soul's lucid ritual, the poem's wrist wound with a self-same thread of mourning and gratitude, tenderness and rage. I believe the day is inexhaustible, even as human roads are shadowed by death from exhaustion. I believe love is our only resurgence. So many never get the chance. I believe alertness is the heart's keel, its irreducible stone, as the industries of distraction and control gather to crush it. I forget all this so easily. Vanity tempts me, and the effortless habits of condescension, which is part of the reason I come to the poem. The rest I do not understand. Thank you.